So my biggest thing is security. We're a fully remote company. So that means the laptops are either in somebody's house or a Starbucks or in a hotel. So it is 100% of the time in a hostile environment. I mean, our houses is probably the worst environment because you never know. It's a little scary actually, because security to me is one of those things is how do you truly lock down a laptop that's always essentially in a hostile environment? And so you want to find an MSP that solves those problems that you're looking for.
G'day and welcome back to Practice Leading. Thanks for joining me again. Are you thinking about launching a managed services practice? Or maybe you're a full MSP, a managed services partner? My business Superware is about to launch a managed application support practice. So today I'm learning from Ole Gjerde. He is the CEO of TruNorth Dynamics, and he's going to teach us all about the ups and downs of adding managed services to a consulting business. Ole built a custom software business before running a managed services business, before running a business applications business. So he's run the full gamut of business models. Ole shared lessons from years of building, merging and separating MSPs, and why focus and a clear division of teams are crucial for success. We also discussed when it's smart to outsource your own internal technology support for any Microsoft partner, and if you're going to launch an application support practice or MSP business, how to structure pricing for real customer value, and why it's more important than ever to prioritize transparency and partnership with your customers. If you want to scale your business the right way, you don't want to miss these insights. And a little apology to make. Today I was on a backup camera. I had a little technical difficulty when we launched this morning, and towards the end of the episode, ironically, I lose focus. My camera loses focus at least, which is probably a better way to enjoy my face, to be honest. Here's Ole Gjerde from TruNorth Dynamics. Ole, welcome to Practice Leading. Thanks so much for joining me on the show. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
I reached out to you because my business, Superware, is about to start a managed service line of business. It's still completely new to us, but we're hiring into it for the first time rather than just having one of the co-founders provide support. And we're supporting business applications, not a full gamut of hardware and software networks and logins and everything, but it's an area you've got a lot of experience in. Do you mind sharing a quick background with some of our listeners?
Sure. So my name is Ole Gjerde, and I'm the CEO of TruNorth Dynamics. Obviously, we do Dynamics today, but obviously my story is a little more complicated. So the quick version of it is I started my first IT company when I was in college in the late 90s. I grew that for about 10 years, merged with another IT company. That was a bad idea. So that didn't work out. So we walked away. We started a pure play MSP, so only fixed fee services in 2012. Grew that to I think we're about $3.5 million. And we acquired then a Dynamics practice, what is now TruNorth, trying to combine the two companies. Turned out that was a very difficult and challenging thing. So after about 3 years, we actually gave up and we split them back out, MSPs, and sold off to somebody else. And here I am after 4 years of IT services, running a company doing business applications, everything from CRM to ERP only, which has definitely been quite the road.
You're scaring me now. Is it a bad idea to have a managed service practice as part of a business applications business? Am I crazy? Am I going to end up regretting this move?
So it's an interesting question. Now, part of that is maybe unpacking what is an MSP,
right?
And what part of an MSP we're talking about. What I would say is for smaller MSPs / Dynamics practices, I actually do think it's a very bad idea. The kinds of people you're typically hiring are going to be different. The target market for clients are going to be a bit different. Dynamics is typically going to be a little bit more into larger SMB to mid-market. MSP is obviously more small business. Now, if you do co-managed, that's a whole nother story because now you're playing more in the mid-market space. So I think for smaller ones, if you're big enough and you can have truly two separate areas where there's a separate set of leadership to truly have focus, I think it could work. What we ran into is that we all of us owners, there was 3 of us running, part of the business. We were all involved in both parts of the business.
Right.
That I don't think can work. You need to have true focus. I mean, it's true for anything in business. If you want to be successful, you have to have focus, not necessarily on one thing, but you have to have clear focus and have enough commitment to every part to make it work. And then having it be in one company, what does that mean? If you run it kind of as two truly separate divisions, I think they can be fine together. I think as a smaller, cohesive company, Maybe we're just not smart enough to make it happen, but I would be very concerned that it would be a big challenging thing. But I guess my first question is like, typically an MSP covers everything from help desk for end user support, email, Office 365, managing security, really covering almost anything when it comes to technology from a desktop, laptop, servers, firewalls, networking, and that kind of stuff. So I guess, are you foreseeing it being kind of the holistic across all of it, or is it a very particular kind of niche as part of that?
No. So in fact, we're going through the exercise of finding an MSP to support our hardware, do end user support, look after identity and security, Microsoft 365, because that's not our core business. We have no expertise in that area at all. So we're going to outsource that to somebody who's bread and butter is doing that. I guess it's a managed application support business. We're just going to manage Dynamics 365 and Power Platform applications, starting with the ones that we've built and deployed for our customers. And then if we find another customer who's, maybe deployed an application themselves or had another partner do it and that partner doesn't provide support, then we'll maybe consider supporting applications that other people have built. But I'm a little wary of inheriting other people's skeletons in the closet. What was it like when you're an MSP and you're picking up somebody else's network or all their IT problems for the first time? There must be quite an onboarding project to figure out where everything's broken.
It is a really big challenge. And throughout the years, we've been in not only IT services, we also did custom software development for a long period of time. So truly building custom solutions, in which case we did do exactly that. We would take on an application somebody else built, and we're going to take over maintenance and that kind of stuff.
Right.
It's a big challenge. I mean, it's certainly very possible. I would not personally want to really get into that business again. I think it's low value for clients. So charging enough to really be able to learn the system, dig in, understand the source code, that kind of stuff, I think is a big undertaking. So from that standpoint, and then for MSPs, I think every MSP has a different approach to this. Some people make you do a bunch of projects up front to get your network up to, a decent standard. Some people just onboard you and deal with all the stuff comes. I'm not sure there's a right or wrong, but taking over something somebody else built, it's not even about good or bad, right? I mean, because everybody has a different way of philosophy, thinking about how something's going to work. That doesn't mean that they were wrong. But if your philosophy is different, now it's there's going to be a lot of friction there. And unfortunately, the old provider's already gone. You will end up with that friction. And so how do you have a good process and a system to handle that friction, to get it to a point where you do understand what they're doing and that kind of stuff? So yeah, I mean, both for an MSP and doing like custom software development, taking over other people's systems, I think it's challenging. We did it. I mean, it can be done. I'm sure you run into this too. Somebody else does a Business Central or CRM implementation. We'll take it over. Has its own set of challenges, right? I mean, everybody, sets it up different ways. Some people do a lot more customizations so that it breaks it upgrades. So pretty much no matter what business you have some form of this. But building the expertise to do that really well, I think is challenging. And MSPs run into this a lot because for Dynamics, there's only so much, right? There's only so many pieces you have to worry about. MSP, it is everything. Like literally, there's nothing in the network that cameras, we talk like you name it. And you have to at least to some level understand everything in a network. After 20 some years, I'm pretty happy to be done with full MSP because I think it's actually a really tough business.
So for all of those Microsoft partners out there who aren't MSPs today, who are maybe Azure partners, business apps partners, what are the signals that they actually need an MSP in their life? What point do you think it makes sense to outsource all of your non-core technologies so you can focus on the parts of your business that really deliver value to your customers?
Early and often, I mean, so it's been really interesting. So we split out in 2021, so it's about 4 years ago. And so I went from being an MSP for 20 some years to now in the last 3 years or so, I'm a client of MSPs, which is really fascinating because I have a very different and I think unique perspective now that I never had before. We never really understood the clients and the pain they went through, if I'm going to be super honest with myself, especially now that I've learned what it is like as an end client. It is really interesting. Now, I'm also a bad client because I know too much, which is not like, I know I can be kind of annoying. But part of it is I know what it could be, right? What should security be? What, things like Office 365 token, session token, hijacking, all that kind of stuff. I know these things exist and I would like to be protected again, but most MSPs aren't necessarily really great at these things. But honestly, I think it's early and often. Pretty much if it, this comes back to my focus comment. Business is partially about focus.
Yeah.
Where are you trying to get to? What's your strategy? What's your plan? And then it just boils down to execution. There's not a lot of secrets in business. I mean, there's no magic sauce that somebody figured out. It's putting all these pieces together. But I do think a lot of that is focus, especially us, historically nerdy people. We loved doing all the stuff. We'd still set up users. We'll still do all this other stuff. And it took me a long time to and my other leadership team to untrain me and no, just leave that stuff alone. Let the experts handle it. You're way more worth, doing the other things than you are doing that kind of stuff. So, I think the question everybody has to ask themselves is, okay, so if you could take the time you're spending on doing this stuff that is relatively low value and apply that to vision, strategy, execution, sales, process, whatever it is that you need, how much faster can you grow your business? How further ahead can you get? But it's a hard change because, it took me a long time to figure that out.
I had an initial call with a potential MSP last week, and they were asking me how much time I spent, supporting our laptops. I was like, well, touch wood, but we've never had an issue with any of the hardware. We've got 30 people. We've probably had 40 laptops in that time, and we're all good. And then, of course, I walk into a meeting room yesterday, and Deepti, one of our consultants, my Wi-Fi card's playing up. It's like, oh no, I'm going to have to do a warranty call with Dell. It's just not stuff I should be messing around with. So absolutely, get some focus. Let somebody else deal with put their expertise to use in looking after our hardware. The message is clear: outsource the technology support as soon as you can to an expert MSP. In terms of finding one, should I be looking for somebody who's much bigger than us, who's got a broad range of services, who's ISO 27001, who maybe provide a premium service that's going to last us for many years as we grow? Should I be looking for a smaller one who's maybe less expensive, provides a narrower range of service? How do you find the right sweet spot in terms of a managed services partner who's going to be a perfect marriage for you?
That's a really interesting question. And honestly, this is probably applicable to any business. I think the most important is you have to understand what you're looking for. And it took me some time to figure this out because I know too much, right? So I kind of started with I don't like ConnectWise. So really they should use, Ninja or whatever. Why would I ever care as a customer?
This is in terms of ticketing or monitoring, or I've heard of ConnectWise, but I'm not exactly familiar with it.
So ConnectWise is both a PSA and then they also have their Automate, or ConnectWise RMM, whatever it's called now. So it's like monitoring, patch management, all that kind of fun stuff. So I was getting mired in tools and that kind of stuff. And then I kind of got to the point where it's why do I even care about the tools? I actually don't care what tools they use. And because it's true for most business, people get really stuck on tools and they get one tool and they're well, it's not perfect. Maybe I should look at this other tool. MSPs have this kind of disease and we did it many times. So I'm not casting the stones very far, but tools are just tools and you kind of get out of them whatever you put in. Now there's some that are better than others. That's true. However, you're almost always better off committing to the best thing you can find and then you just commit to it and you make it work. And so for me, it's all about the outcomes. So I think small and big, I don't think is not necessarily that important. Operational maturity would be one of them, right? Do you have high expectations for how mature they are as a company, having systems, consistency, things like that? Do you really value help desk versus security? Compliance obviously be part of that. So my biggest thing is security. We're a fully remote company. So that means the laptops are either in somebody's house or a Starbucks or in a hotel.
Sounds familiar. Yeah.
So it is 100% of the time in a hostile environment. I mean, our houses is probably the worst environment because you never know. It's a little scary, actually.
Scare me now. You're scaring me. Holy, I just set up a new network last night.
Well, you should be a little scary because security to me is one of those things is, how do you truly lock down a laptop that's always essentially in a hostile environment? And so you want to find an MSP that solves those problems that you're looking for. Have they done it before? Have they worked with similar businesses? Not necessarily the same business, but professional services organization like ours that they're used to people being remote. They're used to people needing, to travel and it always is working and that kind of stuff. And really just make a list of all the requirements you have from a business standpoint. And obviously interviewing and talking to that. Yep. The problem is most MSPs will tell you that they do it all. I wish I had an easy answer for how to really determine it. Yeah. But I think it's getting, how they approach those things, how they talk about it. Do they seem to have a clear process and a system? What does the onboarding look like? When they onboard you, what are the problems that they typically see that you're running into? Because no matter what you onboard, there's going to be problems. And if they tell you everything is amazing and perfect, well, they're probably not going to be very honest. And so MSP is tricky because every MSP is different. They all approach things differently. They use a totally different technology stack. They all focuses on various parts. Some are good at some things, some are good at other things. So I think it boils down to what's the most important things. You want the most amazing help desk. Like for us, we don't really use a help desk very often because we have consultants. They typically...
I can't imagine us using one much.
So help desk is not, we need it, but it's not really that valuable. For me, it's more about that security, data governance, and eventually getting to compliance. Being in the US, we'd like to do our SOC 2 at some point next 12 months. We'll need an MSP that, can support that, right? Not necessarily do the SOC 2 compliance, but do all of the things that they do to be the base for SOC 2 to be able to pass it. And if they can't do that, they would be the wrong MSP. So for like you, if ISO 27001 is one of the things, you're going to want to find one that at least has worked with clients that requires that kind of compliance. Because at least that they should be pretty good because, that one's even harder than SOC 2 to pass, I'm pretty sure.
That's good. So yeah, the one I'm speaking to, they support a lot of financial services customers, and we build business applications typically for financial services customers. So I'm thinking there's a lot of overlap there, and the kind of those entities are all regulated by a regulator called APRA here. So I figure if we're up at the same standards, then when a customer asks us about security, we can say, look, we comply with the APRA regulations, and our MSP is ISO 27001, and their customers are all your peers in your industry. So that'll give us hopefully some assurance that we're on the right track.
I think that's a good approach. It's another variable that'll be hard for a basic MSP that doesn't have the experience to really convince you that they know what they're doing when they can't even speak to the thing. So yeah, I think that's a good approach.
And then the other killer question from my team is, my developer laptop is going to get locked on? Am I going to lose admin privileges? And so, we're going to have to find the right balance here, because I have seen a SharePoint partner put out of business because a laptop was lost and then found to have a complete list of blood donors on it. They were working for a blood donation bank.
Oh boy.
And the business got put out of business. So I want Purview or something else to let me know as soon as there's a big list of customers on somebody's hardware, because we should not be taking customers' data off their network.
Well, that too, but it happens. And so for us, it's making sure every single laptop is fully BitLockered, for example, because, it's got to be encrypted. That is, pretty much any compliance framework is going to require that. And so I wouldn't say we're great yet, but I think we're making good strides in actually providing it. Purview would be the next kind of evolution. Actual using data governance, actually tagging documents so that the system, Azure will actually, protect all those things. Is 99% of MSPs don't even touch that at all. Yeah. I have yet to find somebody that's affordable. I know the big, Accenture and the big consulting companies absolutely do it, but you're spending crazy money that we just can't afford to do. So I think there's actually a market here for somebody that would start a business that does things like this, but for SMB, because every SMB should have this, but it's got to be made way easier, because that's actually the big problem. You should think it's possible to do it relatively affordable. I have enough on my plate, so I don't think I'm going to go after that business right now.
Focus, Ole, focus. Yeah.
Focus. It's all about focus.
That's right. I think you're right. I think with AI, you talked about tagging documents. I think AI can now determine the type of content of a document or a file pretty easily, and probably suggest the sensitivity of the content. So yeah, those things should be easier, more accessible to SMBs in the future. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, couple 3 years. I think it's going to be pretty easy, but it's still, everybody, talks about AI taking over the world tomorrow, and I'm not too worried about it's going to happen tomorrow, because it's still not very smart. There's glimmers of coolness and things that are kind of incredible, and then you ask it super basic questions that any human would answer, and it's basically knows nothing. So I'm like, I think we got some time.
Yeah. All right, so you've I can help me nail my MSP decision and give me some good factors to think about. Let's move on to the original topic of our conversation, which is about adding managed services to a practice that, in our case, it's business applications development. It could be Azure development or whatever. But what are the things to look out for when it comes to providing a support service for your customers? What should I know before getting into this?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think most Dynamics, or business applications, we can, whether it's NetSuite, it doesn't matter. We'll do with some element of support, right? When clients have issues, supporting them and all that kind of stuff. We have years, right now we're about 35 people. I would expect we'll continue growing about 20% year over year for or potentially more over the next couple to 3 years. And, currently support is kind of done by the team as a whole. We don't have a dedicated support team.
Right.
I already know the next evolution of making support and application management amazing is to have a dedicated team that this is what they do.
Yeah.
To have systems, to have processes, to have everything set up to actually create amazing support and actually manage stuff properly. And we do elements of it. We definitely don't have it, what I call a cohesive setup. The problem is, how do you get, critical mass to be able to afford to do it?
Yeah.
Because
That's exactly our conundrum.
Yeah, until you have enough recurring revenue to actually pay for it. So then how do you get started? For us, we're kind of in the middle of this too, right? We do the support, we do some of the management, but not as like a true managed services. And so in that specific case, we're probably in the same boat as you. We know we need to do it. This is the next evolution. I've always thought when we acquired this company in 2018, I didn't know that much about the consulting world and business applications. And it's been quite the learning experience. But honestly, one of the things I learned is it's a terrible business. It's actually terrible for clients. If you look at all the big consulting companies, they are driven to charge as much money as humanly possible and not worry as much about creating value for the client. Well, that's actually a terrible dichotomy between vendor and client. So one of my driver over the last couple, 3 years particularly has been, how do we change this? How do we create this to be truly a win-win with our clients? Because I want partnerships. I don't want clients necessarily.
Yeah.
I want... we're just humans working together, solving problems, right? So we have expertise, they have their expertise, but they need our help. How do we work with them to solve those problems? So even into things like being super transparent with your clients. A lot of consulting companies kind of like, if they make a mistake, they'll be like, don't worry about this. As humans, don't most of us just want to work with other good humans? And so my big thing is kind of holistically, how do we change this business, at least for us, or maybe set an example of what can be. And I know, I did a little bit of research on your couple of different businesses, and, I love everything, that you're talking about on your website and how you're approaching it, because it sounds like you have a very similar kind of approach. Like, how do we change this? How do we not just make this billing an hour here and there and just make lots of money? Let's create true win-wins. Let's find ways to change the way we work, and the managed application space is just yet another one of those pieces to me. But it really goes into a big thing, because you add some business intelligence, you add some data governance. I mean, we touch some of these pieces, training, So it's not just about training one time, but it's how do you really enable a user to use business application, right? They're investing a ton of money into it. How do they really use it? How do they actually get to feel where, wow, this is making my life easier. This is actually making my job easier, which, how many people say that about software? Not very many people. Can it be done? Yes. Is it easy? No, it is. I'm not going to say we've got to figure it out, but I do think it's something that we're focused on. So I think for the managed application, I wish I could give you the answer, because we're kind of in that same journey of figuring it out. Since the day we acquired it, I've always known this is something we're going to do at some point, because fixed fee or all-inclusive, depending on what part of it you're looking at, is part of the element that you need for truly a win for the client. Yeah. So they have certainty. What is the value that they're getting and how much money are they spending for it? Because if you can't give them those two things, well, now it's always stacked in the vendor's favor. Yeah. I don't think that makes a good relationship. And so, there's no easy answers. I know there's some people doing it. Most of them are doing it for smaller customers. I guess I'd be curious as your client size, but we do everything from relatively small businesses into, maybe they have a couple, 3 licenses of Dynamics, all the way up into enterprise. Well, mid-market enterprise doing truly managed services for applications is a big risk for a small company.
Well, that's the boat we're in. Most of our customers are much bigger than us. They're hundreds of people, mid-market and enterprise, government, financial services. And there's certainly a risk there. We're taking on very complex, not just applications, but portfolios of applications and their integrations and all the baggage, mostly that we've built. So we know the systems pretty well. But the day will come when we're taking on a system that we haven't built. You at least have got years of experience of setting up the processes and the systems and the PSA and whatever else you need to run a support practice. I've dabbled in that stuff in the past, so we're coming into that a little bit fresh. We are going to probably hire a service delivery consultant or somebody to help us set up all the policies and procedures and fine-tune our system to make sure that it's capable of providing support. You touched a couple of times on pricing or value exchange. How do you make sure it's set up fairly for both parties? And that's something I'm really curious about, because the models that we've put in place in the past have varied widely. One we had was, because we're supporting a membership application, we don't price it based on number of users, but on the number of members inside it. So as their membership organization grows, then the support fee would increase right in line with their business growth. And if it shrinks, well, our fees would shrink as well. There's also different metrics and ways of charging. Do you think there's a model that TruNorth would consider whenever it offers this more mature managed support business?
I don't know if there's a right or wrong answer for that. Some of this is risk management, because that's part of the challenges. It's the inclusion, the exclusions. MSPs run into this too. So anytime you do anything managed services where it's one price for something, almost no matter how closely you document that, that's going to create a lot of friction with clients. And that's always my biggest concern, So if you think about customer experience, getting rid of friction is one of those things, But billing is by far the biggest friction between consultancies and clients, because there is no magic way to do billing in a way that clients just love. Nobody loves writing big checks. Now, I think there's a lot of options. I think our next evolution for us is actually to create options for clients, because I also like the idea of empowering people. Usually when people are empowered to make their own decisions, they may not be happy, but they're at least less unhappy. Yep. So, it's a fast, cheap, and good. Pick two out of the three. Kind of same basic idea. So, everything from, obviously not so much on the managed side, but even thinking of implementations and all this kind of stuff. Everything from obviously just pure time materials. Some clients just want to pay you as they go. Some people want to do by milestones. So the client actually gets something for a certain amount of money. Everything from more like consistent billing, and you do it more of an agile sprint. And we've done all of the varieties over some period of time, because some clients is, government, for example, they just have certain requirements. It doesn't matter what you do, you're doing it this way, whether you like it or not. And so I think what we figured out is we've kind of tried every different way of doing it. And I'm like, why can't we pretty much offer not all, but at least a lot of the major things, so clients can choose what's important to them. If they would rather have a very consistent bill every single month, and the delivery goes a little bit up and down, or whether they want consistent deliverables and that kind of stuff. There's no reason we can't accommodate most of those things. And so looking forward to managed applications is, what are all those inclusions? How do we manage our risk? What is the likely load? And it's like the insurance model, right? You lose a little bit of money on few, you'll make a bunch on money on both. But how do we get started on that? So in our case, we're starting small with specific parts of it. And then we're going to see what works and what doesn't. Because the problem is, you go and make the perfect packaging or product. Is that what client wants? Yeah. There's only one way to find out, which is to go try to sell it.
I understand what you're saying about giving customers options. It just breeds a lot of complexity in your business and in your billing system and in your contracts. And I remember when I first launched a hosted CRM company back in 2006. I can't remember how much we charged. £50 is back in the UK. So £50 per user per month. It was all inclusive. That included your Microsoft CRM license, the hosting cost, the support, operations and everything else. And then my sales team would go back and go, oh, I've got this customer and they've already got the license. So we just need to strip that out of the £50. And this one over here, they don't want support, or they just want support. You've got to strip that out, unbundle it. And suddenly our price list went from, one thing to 7 things. And every customer's got a different combination of those 7 things. And it just doesn't more complicated.
It is. But I think for us, I'm willing to take on the internal operational complexity, because it does allow us to... now, I know there's 2 different business philosophies here. Some people are like simplify to perfection, which is a great way to do a business. I think the challenge is you are going to become fairly narrow, right? You're going to create a kind of a very clear target market. Yep. There's plenty of people that say that's a good thing. I'm going to try the opposite. Not to be everything to everyone, because you can't. But how do you create the illusion of significant options? It's just not quite as much as it comes across. Our basic process is still the same. The way we project manage, the way we approach the project, the way we approach the meeting, like walking through the client with specification gathering, all of that stuff is identical. So for me, I'm separating the work that we do and the billing mechanism,
Okay.
because the
Yeah.
billing mechanism is most of the friction. Well, let's figure out how to just make this just not an issue. And we'll see. I mean, we're probably about halfway through that. I guess, by the end of the year, I think I'll know, like, is this going to work and how much complex will it make our business? I think it's going to be limited because it's primarily going to be a little bit in the sales process, because obviously they need to be able to understand the different options, a little bit on the billing side, but that can most be automated, and a little bit on the project management side. But again, it's pretty minimal because their basic steps are all the same. They may provide slightly different information throughout the thing. So for me, that's a reasonable increase in operational complexity, but limiting client friction and meeting the client a little bit more where they are. So will it be successful? Yeah, it'll work. There'll be problems. We'll tweak it as we go.
Well, it allows you to say yes to more prospective customers, right? If they insist on a certain value exchange or billing mechanism or whatever, you can say, yep, we can accommodate that. Yeah.
And as we grow, I think the complexity can be split up. No different than if you have an MSP, like full MSP in a Dynamics company. If you're big enough, they can kind of run semi-independent. And again, depending on some of the complexities and where they lie, I think long-term, there's a way we can get rid of it. But again, between automation systems and some AI, a lot of that can be automated. And so that's partly why now is the right time to do some of these complexity things, because there's a lot more options now than were back in the day. Back in the day, you have to write a bunch of code to do all this crazy stuff. No thanks. Yep. We don't have time for that. So I think that just time is right to meet the clients where they need us to be, instead of forcing them to always do it our way.
As I think about the developers in our business, I'm going to end up with 3 different types of Microsoft developer. One is a consultant who's billable on projects doing great customer work. Their goal is to remain highly utilized, doing interesting work, solving difficult problems. We've got product developers who are building ISV products on the Microsoft platform for us. And I try not to spill them over into doing consulting work, right? They fill in a timesheet, but it's just doing product development. They're never consulting for customers. And so that just allows them to focus on product development. Now I'm going to have a new class of developer who's a support developer who sits somewhere in the middle. They're going to be supporting our products. They're going to be solving problems for our customers that our customers have raised. But I'm trying to keep them dry. I'm trying not to get them on timesheets where they're doing consulting work. And I'm trying, what do they do when they're not handling a support issue? Do I get them doing product development? How do I keep them productive and doing meaningful work when there's no support tickets? And I hope there's not enough support tickets. If there's too many support tickets, then we're all in bother. But how do you think about allocating people efficiently across your parts of your business like that?
Oh, this is a conversation we've had many times. And, so our companies are about the same size. So we're running into the same issue where we're not quite big enough to have truly dedicated people, but the overlap sucks, right? If you're a consultant working on a project, getting interrupted all the time by doing tickets is bad for everyone. It's bad for the client. It's bad for the consultant. I think short term, there is no super easy answer. I think for me is, what we're working at right now is how do we grow the business to the point where we can have the separation? Now, the part that we have, so I think our businesses are extremely similar. So I think our product people are highly focused. They only work on IP-based products, and because that to me is truly the future of, obviously making a lot more money is disconnecting hours and dollars. We don't need to hire a bunch of people necessarily. Support, yeah, we're running into the same issue. We have people that are like primarily support and people that are primarily consultants. Yeah. And then there's a little bit of overlap. So every quarter, we're just trying to minimize it more and more and more. And I think we're getting it to be much better. But I think the next evolution is to truly have a separate support department. All they do is support. How do you keep them busy? I mean, ideally, we have it lined up enough that the resourcing matches, the revenue that's coming in. And if they're not necessarily busy, it's not the end of the world. And, you can give them pet projects, whether it's research or playing around with AI, agentic kind of stuff. Because I think about support people tend to be more the junior ones. So how do we give them opportunities to expand their skill sets and hopefully eventually, if they want, move into more of a full consulting role? And for me, that's where we want to get to. We're in the middle of figuring that out right now. I would expect that we'll be able to separate the support environment maybe late this year, but probably realistically sometime in the first half of next year.
Okay.
And that's going to be the magic, because now you can have way more consistent support. You can have managing SLAs and all that stuff is 10 times easier because you know exactly what resources you have and what needs to be done. And you don't have to steal from consulting to do it. But in the meantime, we just do the best we can. Unless somebody's going to give you a bunch of money to do it the right way right up front, I think that's probably the only way to do it is to do it messily, but supporting our people the best we can, minimizing the distractions as much as we can. I don't know if it is a better answer at this point.
Have you ever had a customer yet that maybe, I don't know, they've got a business central deployment and it's mission critical and it's like, we need 24/7 support or we need weekend coverage? How do you handle those kind of requests when you're this kind of size? That's another conundrum we're stuck with.
So I don't know that we've ever actually been, we've been asked, don't get me wrong, but we don't offer 24/7. We try not to do much on call and that kind of stuff. I mean, our people are already busy enough. So one of my big things is, how do we balance the work and their home life and all that kind of stuff? It just has been an issue for us. I'm sure we'll run into it at some point. For me, probably the easiest way to solve that, if a client came and demanded it and it would be worth it, would be to try to set up a partnership with somebody else, right? One of the beauties of the world nowadays is where you are really isn't that important. And so, in most of the bigger companies like, Paxade or other ones, they have people in the UK, they have people in Australia, and really be able to handle any time zone. One day I hope to get to that point where we can grow to that size. Unless it's a client that we couldn't say no to, honestly, I'd probably just say no because, that just like with support, that's an even bigger jump from, the 8 to 5 or whatever to do 24/7 support. As an MSP, we did have it. We did a rotation with the technicians where they had originally a pager and then obviously, a cell phone that was handed around. It does really suck for the employees, right? So it's something I'm trying to avoid it as long as humanly possible because even though consultants will do it, it sucks. Nobody likes doing, you're in the middle of supper with kids and you have to take a call. It's just, so luckily we've been able to avoid that. But beyond that, I would probably recommend looking at potentially like a partnership where somebody, an organization in a different time zone can handle those other ones because then at least you don't have the cost all the time.
Yeah, I remember chatting with one of my customers and she said, if we needed 24/7 support, obviously you'd have to have 3 people so you could rotate 8-hour shifts. I'm like, no, you need... I remember at Rackspace, when they wanted another 24/7 pod, I think it was 8 or 9 people to cover all the time zones, the holidays, the weekends. It's not a simple case of split 24 into 3 8-hour shifts. You need a lot of people.
Expensive.
It's very expensive, yeah.
MSPs, a lot of MSPs dream of building their own SOC, right, for security. But again, it's the same problem. You need so many more people that the cost... So if you're not a company of scale, I don't know that it's possible.
Yeah.
So you have to do things like you put people on call. But then my question is, so let's say, XP consultant have it. Are they going to answer the phone at 1 a.m., 2 a.m.? I mean, I don't know. Historically, it works sometimes. Well, I don't like promising our clients that we're going to provide 24/7 support and then we fall down when they have a need, right? I mean, I'd rather disappoint them up front to say we don't offer 24/7 support because currently we don't. And so far, it's never been a deal breaker. I think a lot of clients want it, but then when they're told usually how much it costs to have that kind of thing, they're like, it's probably not a big deal. And I think for most organizations, they're not operating 24/7. So I think it's pretty rare that they really need it.
Well, it's been a fascinating conversation. You've helped me clarify a lot of, certainly going and finding an MSP, we've got a lot of clarity there. I think building our own MSP business, there remains some open questions. But you give me lots to think about and I really appreciate your advice. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I guess the one thing I would say is maybe don't call it MSP because I think most people would assume you're going to get into like IT services. And I like the other term you use, managed application services, because I think that is the next evolution of anyone that does consulting in the business application space. And we're here for it too. And we'll figure it out together because, sharing is caring. And we all have similar challenges to work through. And the best way to do it is to do it together.
Awesome. I really appreciate it. I'll let you know how we get on. I'll share the story with you in a few months' time and you can see where we got to.
All right. That sounds great.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it.
Back to the back on. Thanks, Ole Gjerde from TruNorth for joining me on Practice Leading. You'll find links to Ole's LinkedIn profile and to the TruNorth website in the episode description. One thing he shared with me after we wrapped up was that TruNorth still partners with a lot of MSPs to offer business applications to his MSPs' partners' customers. And Ole loves paying out referral fees to his partners. So if you run an MSP business in the US, and it sounds like a good deal to you, you need to contact Ole pronto. Here are my key takeaways from our conversation today. Number 1, focus is everything. Ironic given the camera situation. Ole stressed the importance of keeping business lines like managed IT services and business app development separate, unless you're truly large enough to have dedicated teams and separate leadership. Spreading your focus too thin can lead to operational headaches and stunted growth. Number 2 was onboarding customers and their baggage into your support practice. It's tough no matter how you try and do it. Taking over systems built by someone else is inherently challenging, whether it's a full MSP business or your support is just limited to something like business applications. You need to invest in strong onboarding processes to manage the friction as you inherit the skeletons in somebody else's closet. And number 3, designing win-win support models really matters. Ole's opinion is there's no one-size-fits-all pricing or delivery approach. And he shared how empowering your customers with options while trying to manage your own complexity helps build healthier, longer-term partnerships. Just be wary of overcomplicating your own operations along the way. A fine balancing act that I'm sure we're all trying to navigate as we grow. I hope you enjoyed our conversation today and found it useful. I look forward to catching up with you next time. Until then, keep experimenting. I hope you enjoyed this practice leading episode and found it just as inspiring as I did. Who would you like to hear from on a future episode? Or what leadership topic would you like to learn more about to help you scale your Microsoft practice? Send me a LinkedIn message and let me know. Your feedback helps me create the show you find most useful. Until next time, keep experimenting.